On the nation's ailing lifestyle with conditions like obesity seen as an endemic problem. One condition linked to this is that of diabetes. What causes it? How best to avoid it, if at all? Join us to discuss this and more only on Women's AM. Bismillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear sisters, and welcome to Women's AM. It's the show that brings you stories of interest, discussion, tips, and much more. We're live from our London studios. In today's show, we have a roundup on the day's stories in News Bites. We discuss diabetes and her reviews, and in our final segment, we discuss and give tips on a dilemma facing sisters in Daily Dilemma. I'm your host, Adama, and joining me on the panel today are my lovely sisters, Liz and Ayan, and our special guest will be Libby Darling, who'll be joining us for the second segment. So, assalamu alaikum, you guys. How are you doing?
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
You're great. Alhamdulillah. It's great to see you again this Thursday morning. Well, we know we've got the Winter Olympics going on, and we've seen a lot of women who have sort of excelled, especially from Britain's side as well. So, I wanted to know, if you were an athlete, what specific sport would you guys want to be sort of doing if you had the opportunity to be part of the Olympics or something like that? So I'm going to start with you, Liz.
Well, not in recent years, but in school I used to do a lot of the hurdles. Do you remember that? Where you'd like run and jump over them? I used to love that. And I think it's kind of held me in good stead for getting through life's hurdles. You know?
Mashallah, that's really, really good. What about you, Ayan?
I don't know, I quite like contact sports, so maybe some judo, also some taekwondo, something like that. I used to do it when I was younger, so something like that would probably be my...
Out.
Yeah, definitely. Get the aggression out, yeah.
Well, for me, I was a bit of a distance runner, so I really enjoyed doing the 800 metres, and I was quite good, can't say for now, but that was quite a long time ago. But I would definitely be a distance runner if I was an athlete.
Wow, endurance.
Yeah, so we're all kind of like road runners and that kind of thing, mashallah. So it's good to know, alhamdulillah. Maybe we should take it up, inshallah.
Yeah, why not?
We should do it and get a VT clip or something like that.
Oh, no.
Well, let's go to our first segment of the show, News Bites. In this first part of the show, our sisters on the panel take a look at stories affecting the community at large. You can join in the discussion and share with us your comments on the articles by calling in. The number to call should be on the screen shortly. So I'm going to start with you, Liz. You've got an interesting story for us from the Metro.
Yeah, it is, as you said, from the Metro. The headline reads, "Human, no thanks, I'd rather be Barbie." Really upsetting story, actually, about this woman who, her obsession, as she calls it, with Barbie started as a child, playing with the dolls, and then as she's got older, she's invested a lot of money in plastic surgery to make her look like the doll, to fit into this kind of unrealistic stereotype that, you know, we see this, you know, not just that doll, but other children's toys and films and things perpetuating. But then she's even taken it a step further, and she's spending, thousands of pounds on hypnotherapy sessions to make her more stupid, because, you know, this image of being like an airhead and a ditzy blonde, and, you know, she makes comments like, "It's really working because I keep getting lost when I go and visit my mum, who lives around the corner, and I grew up in the house." So, you know, and it's just, it's a funny story when you first read it, but actually, it's really disturbing, because this, you know, we have to remember that this woman, she is a product of our society, and this is an extreme example, but I think we see a lot of this, in sort of normal situations in the workplace, and people we know, and this aspiration to be something to be looked at, something, somebody ditzy, somebody stupid, for reasons that are questionable.
I mean, everyone's doing something or other that's questionable just to get a bit of attention, which is quite sad. I mean, what happened to, wanting to be a person of substance, for example? It's quite a shame.
Absolutely. It's trying to reach a sort of stage of perfection, which we can't reach as human beings, isn't it? Yeah. And I always notice that when people tend to sort of take these sort of routes, they end up regretting it really a lot, and it doesn't stop. It's like one minute you want to perfect a certain aspect of you aesthetically, you want to perfect something else, and it just never ends. It's like a never-ending cycle, isn't it?
Well, that's it, and it also made me think about, you know, this whole idea of role models and how we choose role models for ourselves, for our children, you know, and the effect that this has. You know, was there nothing else in her life more that she could aspire to than, you know, a plastic doll?
Definitely. Well, that's an interesting story to look at later. Hopefully, there'll be more stories we can cover on that. Sister Ayan, you've got an article for us as well.
Yeah, this is from The Guardian. It reads, UK unemployment continues to fall with record numbers of women in work. So, you know, on the surface, this article seems like quite a positive one, but it got me thinking, because it says here that more women are in work since the records began in 1971, which seems like a positive thing. But I started to think, really, is it, you know, what's the reason behind all these women going back to work? And it kind of tends to fall to the point that they've got no choice really in the matter, because a lot of people, especially a lot of men, depending on the industry that they work in, have lost their jobs. So women feel that they're forced to go back to work in order to support the family. It also says that 1.4 million people are in part-time jobs because they can't find full-time work. So even the fact that you can't find full-time work also hinders your possibility in, you know, finding a job that actually supports you and your family. And it's quite funny because they're giving us these statistics to, you know, boost confidence in, you know, the economy and how things are starting to work out. But at the same time, it's not really looking at what goes on behind closed doors. What are people's reasons for going, you know, for going into employment? Is the employment suited to their skills? Is the employment suited to what they need to support themselves and their family? And a lot of the time you hear people who do have jobs and who go to food banks and things like that to get the extra support because they're finding life very, very difficult. So on the one point,
sisters as well that might be sort of juggling two jobs.
Exactly.
You know, that's something that needs to be considered as well. And the type of jobs that they're doing, the contracts are suitable for them as well. So that's definitely important.
I mean, and it kind of ropes in with the sort of discussions that have been happening in the news recently about, you know, mothers having to go back into work, but they're finding it difficult because childcare costs are really expensive. They're having to pay something over £100 a week for childcare, and it's probably most of their earnings goes towards that. So I don't know where the benefit is really, to be honest, in that.
There's a lot more to it, isn't it? And that's something that wasn't necessarily sort of explained in the article. Well, Liz, you've got another article in respect to the floods that we've been seeing.
And this I actually really like this article. It's from the BBC. The headline reads, UK floods, how one woman held back the water. And I think, obviously, now we're reading on a daily basis, hearing on a daily basis about the floods and, you know, all the terrible ways that people have been affected by this, and sinkholes is the latest thing, isn't it? The big holes that are appearing everywhere, and it's you know, really upsetting stuff. And this is just the story of how one woman whose house was flooded 4 times in 14 months, she actually took things into her own hands and developed a kind of pumping system whereby she could have the water pumped around her house and back outside again, giving her time to kind of get the furniture off the floor and things like that, so, you know, there'd be less damage and that kind of thing. And it was just really inspirational, actually, that in this, you know, in the face of this dire situation, she's actually able to come up with something that was you know, actually
very
a really
simplistic,
but a really good idea. And in her local area in East Peckham, there's actually like a flood group, and they're holding what they called a flood fair in April, where suppliers of resilience equipment will set up stalls, and you know, her neighbours and local people can go and buy these things. And in the her last comment is, I do feel quite evangelical about it. We are experienced floodies now.
I love that term. It's pretty cool, isn't it? But it's really amazing that, you know, in the midst of this atrocity, and it has actually been the wettest winter since 1766. So to see that a lot of villages and a lot of communities are sort of coming together to mobilise and to give more information and give more support to each other is something that's very, very important as well. Because there has been a lot of stories about how maybe there's not as much investment in preventing floods. So it's really good that people are trying to take it into their own hands as well, and that's that's fantastic to hear about. Well, Ayan, you've got an interesting story to give us as well this morning.
Yeah, this is quite a sweet one. It's from HuffPost. It's 21 love notes that could only have been written by children. So this was kind of, it showed lots of pictures of love notes and cards that have been written by kids to their parents, and one from one sibling to another, and it's quite sweet. And some of them were, "Dear Mummy, I love you. Can you make me a blog yet?" So this one's already trying to break their way into the world, you know, not realising, enjoy your childhood, you know, enjoy it while you can. There's another one, "Mum, you love everything so much, you can hug a dragon and it will love you."
Oh, that's so
which is so
cute.
sweet. Yeah. And then another one on sort of that fantastical theme is, "Dear Daddy, you're so kind. I bet invisible unicorns follow you around. I love you so much."
It's so sweet.
And this one's quite funny, from a sibling to another. "Dear Tyler, you are the greatest brother ever because you hit like a girl." So I'm guessing it means that the punch-ups aren't as painful for them. So, but
you know, kids come out with, it's quite astounding, isn't it?
No, it's funny, and it's things like that that kind of make your day as well. You get this little note, and it's just so, you know, out of this world. It just cheers you up. It's just, it's lovely.
It's so funny. I can relate to that last one, because I used to say that to my brother, you know, "I like it because I can beat you up."
That's quite interesting. It just reminds me of my mum. She works a lot with young disabled kids, and they come up with the funniest of things. So it just makes her day, and working with kids is fantastic, especially when they just sort of like cheer you up and come up with all sorts of funny stuff. But mashallah. And you've got one of our last articles today.
Yeah, well, the final one from The Guardian, Nude Scanner mobile app banned for being demeaning to women. And this article is talking about the, you know, the so-called Nude Scanner mobile app, which, you know, it's a prank. It's not really a nude scanner, but it's the basis of the complaint is that it was being aired early on in the evening while children were exposed to this, and obviously questioning the kind of message that sends to children. And you know, obviously it's a, you know, a very damaging message, you know, that children are getting about cheapening women's bodies and how it's okay to you know, have laughs and pranks around this kind of thing, when actually that can be very damaging.
It's really good that an ad like this has been removed, because people have complained about it, but this is, I think, one piece of the puzzle. I mean, there's so many different avenues to expose and to demean women in ways that are derogatory and are sort of giving out to children as well. I mean, we've got television, we've got adverts out there in the public as well, we've got programs. So, I mean, when I look at it, it's fantastic that it has definitely been withdrawn. But what concerns me the most is the kind of apps that are out there, because downloading apps is one of the most popular things to do on mobile devices nowadays. So it's something that does need to be considered, definitely, and I wonder if there'll be any other control over it. Really,
yeah, because obviously it's a new thing that we're experiencing now for the first time. So, you know, time will tell how this kind of unfolds.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see. We'll have more stories, inshallah. And Ayan, you've got one last article for us?
Yeah, I've got one here from Telegraph. Southwest Trains, worst response ever to a pregnant woman's plight. So this is following the story of Victoria Poskett, a 40-year-old woman who's 5 months pregnant. She got on a train to go from where she lives into London for work. The train was incredibly packed. She couldn't get a seat on there. She's visibly pregnant, and yet she couldn't get a seat. She tried to ask people if they would give up their seat for her so that she could sit down. No one was kind enough or considerate enough to give her a seat. She actually had to sit on the train floor to go to work, because obviously, you know, being pregnant, it's not easy. You know, you're quite heavy, you're a bit unsteady. You need to be able to sit down for a bit. And then she went to make a sort of complaint and request to Southwest Trains, and she said, "Look, I know I've only got a pay-as-you-go ticket because I'm only working 3 days a week, but is there any way that I could get into the first-class carriage and get a seat, because I am pregnant and it's very hard for me to be up on my feet for that long?" And they said, "Oh, we're sorry, you know, it's policy. Unless you've got a season ticket, we can't make this exception for you." So this was their response. So it just, for me, this is kind of highlighting the way in society is kind of going downhill in terms of being considerate towards other people, and it's really sad.
It's definitely really sad that we don't see that consideration and that compassion on public transport, especially when we're all going to work. But thank you for those articles. It was really, really enlightening and interesting to look at those. So barakallah fiki for that. Well, we're off to a quick break, but just a little reminder on our competition that we're holding this week.
This week on Women's AM, we are holding an exciting competition for you sisters out there. Up for grabs are these fabulous items. We